Good evening. My name's Simon Brew. I'm your moderator for this evening. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, but I think that's everything you need to know about me. I'm delighted to be joined by the star of Stardust. He's in that window over there in a very fetching room, if you don't mind me saying, Johnny Flynn. Hello, Johnny. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, being upstaged by my room. Yeah, I'm
It's
good.
better than mine.
Everyone's working hard on their lockdown. You don't know that this isn't, a fake. This could be a jigsaw conjuring.
Look, can I start by, I should start with congratulations, actually. Today it was announced that you've picked up the Best Performance Prize at the Raindance Festival. So in lieu of a huge ceremony, if I can pass on the congratulations and we can pretend I'm handing over a very expensive
Oh,
gong
gosh.
to you.
Thank you so much.
Can we start then? But I mean,
Thank
I
you.
just wonder if you could put, there's been a lot of talk about this film and we've got an audience of people who've just watched it, and hello to all of you. Could you just dig into it a little bit then for us, from your perspective, what you think this film is, why it came to you, how it came to you?
Yeah, I'd love to. I, you know, I think that I was first sent a script that was the sort of genesis of this project back in 2017, I think. And at that point, Salo and the producers were developing a story, and it was around that time that Bohemian Rhapsody was coming out, and Rocket Man was either out or being made or something, and there was a bit of heat for these kind of biopic films, and this film wasn't trying to be that at all. It just it had been developing probably for a few years before that, and it just happened to sort of time in with that. And I think it always wanted to kind of play against the tone of those films. Anyway, I was sent a script, and I just thought, who can touch this? This is not, it's a poison chalice. Can't go near David Bowie. It's just, what's the point? And I turned it. I wasn't even offered it, but I was sent the script, and I just immediately was like, no thanks. And then I was doing a play in New York through the Christmas of 2017 into 2018, and Gabriel Range had come on board as a new director on the project, and he had this whole new kind of way of wanting to tell the story, and he got in touch, and he come to New York to meet, and had this idea that I could do the part, and he came to see me in the play, and that day it seemed kind of serendipitous, but the David Bowie Is exhibition that was touring the world was in Brooklyn at the time, and I went around this exhibition, and I was looking at these pictures of David Bowie's childhood home, and I'd read this script, which at the time was a lot more about his childhood as well, and there was going to be a young actor playing a young David, and it was about who he was in his kind of formative years, really, which is what the film still touches on, but it had more of his kind of childhood. Anyway, I was walking around the exhibition, the incredible kind of kaleidoscope of things that is David in all his influences and things, and thinking, God, I love this so much. And I was a big Bowie fan, but it was something about walking around that exhibition and then meeting Gabriel and hearing him really passionately talk about this story that he wanted to tell. It was very, very small and really tiny, and just about this couple of weeks in David's life, really focusing on this one tour when he first went to America as a very unsuccessful, you're battling with internal demons, and his last singles had been a flop, and not the kind of mega superstar that we know, all pre Ziggy Stardust. And having been through that thing with my own music of kind of turning up in small clubs in America and playing to 10 people who'd rather be watching the football game or whatever, you know, and trying to persuade people to stay and listen to your music, and gone through that process, I related to it, and I thought it was actually quite a beautiful story to tell, because it's a kind of love letter to being a young artist, really, and saying, you know, broadly saying, we all start somewhere, and this great mind, this great creative genius that we all admire, he had these incredibly vulnerable, kind of fragile origins, and in fact, more than most, he was battling all sorts of kind of fears, and that was all in the script. And I thought, actually, that is a story that we can tell. It's not the bombastic kind of hero story that is being told in these other ways in big kind of studio estate backed films. And the other thing was that they weren't going to try and get the estate to be on board with the film. And I'd been involved in Bohemian Rhapsody. I was cast as Roger Taylor, the drummer, and I watched Sacha Baron Cohen pull out of that. And then there was another iteration of the film that fell through, partly because the band wanted to tell one story and the director or the artist wanted to tell another. And what was interesting, I think, about those stories was being lost, and our film didn't need that. And because David was playing a lot of covers at the time, and he's kind of running away from himself, and because we're not doing the big Ziggy years, it was more important to have a version of David that is a shadow, a shell of what we know in terms of the story was. So anyway, so it was exciting, because I thought, this is a tiny, you know, this is more like Control or Nowhere Boy, or a small kind of art house indie film. And yeah, I wanted to take a real risk. I just think, you know, we want to take risks worth taking risks, not playing it safe.
The for those watching, I can see our Q&A window is slowly filling up. If you do have questions you want to put to Johnny, we are going to try and put some of your questions to him at the end, and just tap them into that Q&A window, and one or two of them we'll get to. One thing I did want to touch on is you've got the paradox, really, of an independent film dealing with such a huge global superstar, really. And a lot of times when independent films are being made, you're allowed under the radar a little bit to go off and do your film, and then it's at the point you come to release, there's a bit of a fight to get it noticed. Did you get a little bit of the paradox while you were making it, that you got kind of an unnatural amount of attention for an independent movie?
Yeah. There's a few things. Yeah, it was. It's funny. I think I was a big Bowie fan, but you know, you don't realize until you're, you know, daring to apparently kind of tread on this hallowed ground, that how important he is to so many millions of people. And even though it's a tiny film in its kind of outlay and the way we tried to make it and the way it needed to be made, it got loads of attention, and I think they sold the film very easily, and there was a lot of press about it. And Duncan Jones, who's David Bowie's son, who is a brilliant filmmaker himself, was asked just before we went into production. You know, they said, you know, they're doing a biopic about your dad, and he said, you know, quite rightly, he said, not with his music, they're not. And that's all he said. So he didn't condemn the film, but he just made it clear that it's not that big studio biopic, which is what we were saying as well. And that blew up. It was kind of taken out of context a bit, and people decided to get a bit righteous about that in a kind of cancel culture-y kind of way.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of press just as we were making the film. But I don't know, I really just kind of went into the thing hand in hand with Gabriel, our director, and he had amazing actors in it, Mark Maron and Jenna Malone, who I loved working with, really wanted to work with, and they were perfect for the story. And the team, everybody doing it. There was a real beauty to those artists and those characters involved, and it felt right at every step. And I kept saying, is this is this too bold? At each point where I could possibly pull out, or it just felt, no, this is right. This is a good story to tell, because it's showing people that we all start somewhere, basically.
Before I go to questions from the people watching this, you talked about this blowing up a little bit. The trailer of the film, of course, came out a week or two ago, and I noticed from watching the trailer of the movie and then comparing it to the movie that, with all due respect, the trailer seemed to be selling a slightly different film to the one that you made. And I
Yeah.
wonder how you feel about that, and the response
Yeah.
to that and being caught in the middle of it.
I was a bit, if I'm honest, I was a bit upset at the trailer. I would rather. I understand the way it's a precarious industry, and all bets are off at the moment, especially in terms of how you can get your film to be seen. But I think sadly the film is not indicative of the heart of the film. The trailer is not indicative of the heart of the film, and it has this very bombastic music, and it's got this whole Ziggy thing, as if it's on like Freddie Mercury ending up at Live Aid or something. And that Ziggy stuff is, you've seen the film, it's a tiny bit at the end, and that's really unfortunate, because I think it's been recharacterized as something it's not, and the Bowie fans have taken umbrage to it, and I've been sent crazy. I've never been the subject of. Occasionally people don't like a record I've put out or something. But thousands and thousands of messages online, like violent, sometimes really violent messages. Yeah, and you think, God, actually, yeah, he really means a lot to these people, and to me. Don't. It means a lot to me. I've done this so carefully. I've really trod very carefully at every step of this. So don't worry, I'm not gonna fuck with David. And it's been a funny old week, actually, with everything going on in that. But it's calmed down now. I to be honest, I can't wait for the film to be out, so that people can start to see it for what it is, rather than what it isn't.
Okay, I'm going to turn to some of the questions from the people watching. Prizarro just wants me to say hi, Johnny Flynn. So I'm going to say hi to you. Karen is asking, after watching this film, what do you want audiences to add to their memory of David Bowie? And do you think this film further humanizes him for general lovers of his music and artistry?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Leading question. Yes. The answer is, that's the idea, isn't it? I mean, that's the difference between film and documentaries, fiction, telling a story and making a documentary as well, is that we get to go in there and imagine who this person, there's a lot of supposition, of course. We don't know exactly how his face looked at every second of the thing, but it's an imagined version of the situation that he was in, and it's a hugely sort of empathetic version of David, I think, and it's nice to show somebody before we have all that footage of him, basically.
We've got a question coming from Alessia, and Alessia asked, do you find it difficult to leave characters behind? And in particular, was it difficult to go back to normal life after being David Bowie for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most intense experiences I'd ever had on a film, or any job, really. Even though it was relatively short. It was like a month, kind of from beginning to end of filming. But I had to lose a lot of weight. I had to learn all these songs, because we do sing songs, but not, we sing the songs that he was singing at the time, but not his own. We're doing he was covering Jacques Brel and various people, Anthony Newley, and people he was influenced by, and learning, adapting to a sort of a new physicality, and working on the voice all the time and things like that. That stuff does stay with you a little bit, and you kind of stay in the zone. Certainly for the time that you're filming, you kind of stay in a place where you can access that stuff. But yeah, sorry, can you hear the fireworks going off? Sounds
I
like
can.
campfire. Yeah, it stays with me a bit, but I to be honest, my kids and the family life kind of brings me back down to earth pretty quickly when I get home.
If I can ask you a question from Jill, then Jill asks, do you feel as though you, like David Bowie, might ever see the value in reinventing yourself or your persona for the sake of your art, be it music or acting?
That's really interesting.
These are great questions.
That's a great question.
They're better than mine.
That's why I was interested in playing David, from one point of view, because my my thing when I was starting out as a musician was that I wanted to kind of go deep into a sense of integrity and authenticity, and the idea of dressing up or wearing stage clothes and things like that was the antithesis of what I was sort of trying to do. And it was a weird it's a bit of a hypocritical thing, because walking onto a stage and you have lights and things like that, and I wanted to create a very still environment. I suppose I was like the musical version of like a Brechtian kind of ideal, in the way that I wanted to sing my songs. I just wanted the songs to be everything, and David's the opposite. It's all this artifice and showmanship, and even him as a character. You never know who he really is. He's this personality that morphs into whatever character he's playing. And I remember being on tour with a friend of mine, Anna Calvi, who's a big Bowie fan, 10 years ago, and she was putting on her sparkly jacket to go on stage, and I was buttoning up my like very plain shirt, and she looked at me and was like, don't you want to dress up, And I was like, no, I want to do the opposite. But I love it that you want to do that. And that's the amazing thing as an actor, because that's what I want to do. But I would like to know what it feels like to be that person who wants to dress up and has the situation that creates that version of themselves that wants to be flamboyant or adopt different personalities and things like that. So that's a complicated answer to the question, but as myself, I don't feel like I really want to do that. I still always come back to a kind of pure version of telling a story. But as an actor, I get to dive into these different realms, and I work with a theatre director, or I work with a film director who wants to create a spectacle, or I'm playing a character who has a different sort of set of circumstances that drives them to a different thing. And that was the joy of playing David, because as much as I love him, I'm not him, obviously. So yeah.
You talked just then about just the month-long intensity of playing David Bowie. I've got a question coming from Maria, and she wants to know that basically now you've seen the film and contrasted to the month where you're actually doing it. When you look back at it, would you change anything in the way that you played Bowie in the movie?
Yeah, of course. Like you always, I mean, I always do anyway. I always wince at moments, but I've gotten better as I have done it for longer. That just like letting it be and just going, that's as good as I could do at the time, for whatever I think I just did this chat thing before coming on here with Mark Maron, who
Yeah.
plays Ron Oberman, it's like me and him driving around. We were remembering being in these crazy places filming the film, and you never have any sleep for the duration of a film shoot. You're always you know, I've since doing the film, I've had another year of thinking about David and going, oh yeah, there's this element to him. I wish I'd done more of this, and I didn't really portray this side of his nature, and I wish I'd done a song that was more this, or had channeled this energy or whatever. I don't know. There's always stuff, but you have to let it go, otherwise you'll be up all night for the rest of your life.
Have you felt particularly closer to this film than many of the others that you've done before? And that's with no
Yeah,
disrespect to them at all, but I mean, it sounds like from very early on, this was a collaboration. This
yeah,
wasn't a case of you were sent a script and then turn up on day one. And I wonder if that continued afterwards.
yeah. I think it was one of those. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't. To be honest, you couldn't go from job to job doing this. You know, that that level of involvement, because it would sort of kill you, because it's just. I think that's why I was so hungry for it, because I really hadn't had that kind of experience before of playing a character that carried the film, but in a way, yeah, I don't know, it was a really profound experience for me. And I was, when I met Gabriel and realized what it would be, I had to sort of assemble all of my being to be like, okay, I'm going to do this, and have a level of focus about it. Yeah, so I haven't had that before or since, and I think it would be something very special that would make me want to do it again. But I loved having that experience on it, and working so hard on. I carried on working afterwards on the music, and I would go into the edit and meet, hang out with Gabriel and look at things, and he would send me things, and we've carried on collaborating like that, and talking about other work that he's doing. And it was a very special job in terms of forming those relationships. Yeah.
You're credited in the end credits. You're credited on the score as well, as beyond the song work that you did, just in terms of the composition of the score.
Yeah, I went. I did a bit with Anne Nicholson, who was
Yeah.
the composer on the film. She was very, kind in asking me to go and help her with that, and she called me up a couple of times and said, I need like a wall of male voices. Can you just do some stacks of harmonies? And because I have a home studio set up, I would do that. Just spend a day building these weird kind of Bowie-esque soundscapey noises, and all of that stuff. I think I'm much more interested in a sort of that whole experience of creating a story than just coming in as a jobbing actor. And even if I'm not at the heart and center of a film in other projects, I still often get to work on the music, or I'm doing something just as a musician, and I love all of that. I just love telling stories with music, especially in this one where I got to kind of be there singing the songs, telling the story, being the person who the audience experience all that stuff through, and then carry on thinking about it in the post production. Everything was kind of amazing.
I'm going to give the last question. Sorry, we've torn through this. Going to give the last question to Inigo, and Inigo wants to know, with a person that presented so many different characters and versions of himself, how did you identify the core part of him to help drive your acting?
That's a brilliant question.
That's great, isn't it? Can I take credit for that, Inigo? I think I want that one.
It was, I don't know, because he exactly, he has so many. Every time he talks, you feel like it's a different person. That's what I found. And every TV interview, every radio interview, every clip of him felt like he was just a slightly different shade of his own soul, and how to find that sort of median. I guess I held on to this thought that I kind of learned weirdly from playing women in Shakespeare plays, because I've done a couple of productions of all male Shakespeare plays, and when it works really well, it's because the audience, they know, obviously, it's not David Bowie, you know it's a man playing a woman, but there's an indication. It's not an impression. It's like you're channeling an essence of something that allows for the audience to do most of the work in their own imagination. I didn't want to just do an impression of David Bowie that stopped the audience's imagination from engaging in the story, because I don't look like David Bowie. I can lose a lot. I lost like 2 stone, but I still had slightly round cheeks, you know. And I don't, you know, if you're working so hard to get that voice absolutely perfect, eventually I thought, okay, I'm going to be Johnny Flynn channeling the essence of David. And that means that, yeah, sometimes you're flippant, you're different in different scenes, because that's what he did. He lent on different versions of his character. When he was wearing this piece of clothing, how did that make him feel? When he walks into this room, talks to this person, plays this song, you know, it's different. He, more than anyone, he was this prism of different sort of aspects of himself. So I allowed that to be, really. I allowed the differences in myself to come out, to be kind of pushed out, and somewhere in the middle of that was a real person who was feeling things and being motivated to do things in different ways. Yeah.
Well, huge congratulations on it, on your
Thank
now
you.
award-winning role. What do we see you in next, Johnny?
There's a film coming out, I think in the new year, called The Dig, that we did at the end of last year with Ray Fiennes and various people, and Kerry Mulligan and people. And I'm just finished filming the first kind of post-COVID film that I've done is musical using old songs of mine that I've also similarly, you know, been kind of developing from its inception with a writer director, but not playing a lead part, playing kind of, it's an ensemble cast, and we just did that, which is great, and reimagining all my old songs, which is really fun. Yeah, various things.
Well, we hope you bring that one back to
Yeah.
Raindance for us.
Oh,
Johnny
yeah.
Flynn, and to everyone watching, thank you very much. You all
Thanks
stay
so
safe
much,
and
Simon.
take
Thank
care.
you for all the
Thank you.
questions. Yeah.
Good night.
Cheers.